So, assuming the responsible use of these substances, really things can be done with them. So let's consider the possibilities of each of these three groups that I've put up here. I'm going to show that, normally speaking, what they will do and how far they will go of themselves. This one, cannabis, will of itself go about this far. In other words, it will add the dimension of the sensory consciousness to the symbolic. Pretty much of itself. Cannabis, incidentally, is commonly known as marijuana. And it is a non-habit-forming chemical which has a usually calming but sensory alerting and intensifying effect, which is perfectly harmless if not used in very large quantities. And practically every medical authority who's ever published anything on it agrees with this position. It does not lead to anything except itself, unless it so happens that somebody is selling it to you who really wants to sell you heroin. Then he will try to tempt you and say, sissy, come on, try some real good stuff, you see? And dare a kid, say, to take heroin, but heroin belongs over here and moves in this direction. It's a narcotic. Cannabis belongs on this side of symbolic consciousness and moves in this direction. These two, mescaline and psilocybin, will of themselves take you about that far. Into what I described in this morning's session in various characteristics of what I call the cellular consciousness. Both of them are curious in respect that, of course, you know that mescaline is the same as peyote. It is a distilled synthetic which corresponds to the main active principles in the peyote cactus and is used by the Indians of the Southwest for a religious sacrament. That is the Native American Church, which is a Christian Indian church, which has a very good reputation as a kind of a law-abiding, pleasant people. The characteristic symptomatology of both these substances, this incidentally, psilocybin, is also from the Southwest. That is a synthetic of the active principle of certain mushrooms that are to be found principally in the state of Oaxaca, but actually along the whole west coast of America as far north as Vancouver. The mushroom psilocybe mexicana, Haim, is the principal one so used. And likewise here again, this mushroom, which is called teocanatl, or the flesh of God, is taken for religious purposes in a sacramental way. Both of these, as I would say, have a general atmosphere about them which is rather earthy. They go extraordinarily well with the vegetative world. They bring to life one's vision of nature and water and plants and sky in an extraordinary way. On the other hand, LSD has a more, I can only call it electronic feel about it. I don't know why. But the possibility of LSD by itself is to get to about here. And all that I described as the molecular kind of consciousness. LSD is produced from wheat ergot, from, first of all, lysergic acid, which is derived from wheat ergot and then refined into a very complex molecule a diethyl amide of lysergic acid, and the diethyl amide in particular is number 25. So it's LSD 25 is the normal correct initials for it. The peculiarity of this substance is what a lot will be done by a little. It is given in microgram doses. Now, a microgram is a millionth, isn't it? A millionth of a gram? Thousandth. And a milligram is a thousandth of a gram. A millionth of a gram. And that you can't see. Vitamin B12 is also given in micrograms. And as little as 75 or even 50 micrograms will produce the characteristic effects of LSD in most human subjects. 100 will certainly do it. I would say any dosage over 200 involves risks. And so when irresponsible experimentation involves people vying with each other as to how much they've taken, and they start to go up towards 1,000, they're being just plain stupid. I mean, who knows, like sitting around on a great drunk and betting on whether you could demolish a whole quart of whiskey in an hour. Well, what a ridiculous thing to do. I mean, that's like trying to land a jet aircraft on the freeway. It's just stupid. And so one always feels that in the use of these things that they have the same sort of dangers that high-powered things of any kind have, rifles or automobiles or planes, and therefore that the use of them should be licensed. The question is, we don't know quite how to license them because we don't know who is really qualified to decide. And this is one of the most problematic things of the whole of our technological advance. Who is to decide? Because you see, to be a qualified expert on any of these subjects, it isn't enough to be a psychiatrist alone. It isn't enough to be a psychopharmacologist, that is to say, one who specifically studies the biochemistry or the neurology of these substances. The psychiatrist should also have some knowledge of religion, of sociology, of mythology, of you might say mythology including symbols and all that sort of thing, though that should go along with it. And you see, we don't yet train a class of person who has all these disciplines at his disposal. And so every trained class of person who belongs in a particular category, minister, psychiatrist, pharmacologist, all feel at a bit of a disadvantage and therefore reluctant to assume responsibility for this kind of investigation. But you see, the trouble is one of those things you can't get out of. Somebody has got to assume responsibility for it because it's happening. All these things are being used and nothing is going to stop their use.